Economy Committee to order. I would like to welcome the following members who are present in the council chambers: Committee Vice Chair Cordero and Council Member Say. I understand Council Members Okimoto and Wire will be coming in shortly. Pursuant to HRS Section 92-3.7, this meeting will be conducted as a remote meeting by interactive conference technology with the following procedures in effect for the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony remotely or in person in the council chamber on all items on the agenda when each item is taken up. All persons who registered to testify in person will be called upon first, followed by those who registered to testify remotely. Persons who have not registered will be given an opportunity to speak following the registered testifiers. Before testifying, each person shall state their full name and will be limited to a 1-minute presentation on each item. HRS Section 92-3.7 requires all votes at a remote meeting to be conducted by a roll call unless unanimous. Therefore, if any objections are noted, I will call for a roll call vote. For those council members participating from outside of the council chamber, under HRS Section 92-3.7, the meeting will automatically recess if we lose audio-visual contact with you and cannot reconvene until we reestablish contact. Therefore, please announce beforehand if you will be voluntarily signing out of the meeting. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off all cell phones and welcome Council Member Wire. Moving to agenda item number 1, Bill 10, 2022, CD1, addresses the regulation of land uses throughout Chapter 21 Revised Ordinances of Honolulu 2021, the Land Use Ordinance. Members, I just wanted to briefly go over again my plans for Bill 10, which overhauls the city's land use ordinance use regulations. As you know, the bill is lengthy and complex due to the significance of the changes that Bill 10 would result in with regards to where uses will and will not be permitted and in what circumstances uses may occur. I want to ensure that the council members and members of the public have sufficient time to review and provide mana'o on each use. Accordingly, at each Planning and the Economy hearing, I will be prioritizing proposed amendments by use type, starting today with industrial uses, followed by commercial uses, and then public, civic, and institutional uses at subsequent hearings. Other uses include residential, agriculture, and miscellaneous uses. This will allow us to have robust and focused discussions on each use, and members and the public will be able to more easily track the amendments made at each hearing. Just a note, the uses are color-coded in the master use table. Industrial uses are gray. Each use has use categories: manufacturing and processing, for example, marine and repair. And each use has land uses, for example, light general manufacturing and processing, heavy general manufacturing, and biofuel processing facility. Each month, 2 weeks before the Planning and the Economy hearing, I will issue a memo to members about the scope of Bill 10 that will be prioritized at the upcoming hearing and instructions for amendments. Okay, back to the bill itself. Members, please note that we have posted to the agenda the CD2, OCS 2022-0850 /11/3/2022, 3:01 p.m. That was approved by the Committee on Zoning and Planning at its meeting on October 20th, 2022, and subsequently postponed in committee. Members, as I mentioned and as detailed in the agenda at today's hearing, I will be prioritizing amendments relating to industrial uses. Members, we have listed on the agenda 2 council communications proposing additional amendments to the CD2 version of Bill 10, 2022. That was approved by the Zoning and Planning Committee on October 20th, 2022, relating to industrial uses. We have Council Communication 43, 2023, proposed by Council Chair Waters, welcome, which would reinsert accessory use symbols to the master use table and are otherwise technical in nature. Chair Waters, did you want to say anything else about your proposed additional industrial use amendments?
No, but thank you so much.
We have also Council Communication 40, which I proposed, my proposed additional industrial use amendments would, firstly, add standards for heliports and helistops that would limit the number of operations, time of operations, and size of rotorcrafts that use heliport and helistop facilities to address noise and accompanying disturbances by flyovers and takeoff and landing operations. Note, this would not affect rotorcrafts that use airports and/or DoD facilities. I know many of our communities have complained about loud and excessive noise from helicopters flying over residential areas. While we do not have direct jurisdiction over when, where, and how helicopters fly over our residential neighborhoods, to the extent that helicopters may use heliports and helistops, we do have authority over uses at these facilities. Secondly, I'm recommending amending the definition of brewery, distillery, winery to clarify that the term does not include establishments that fall within the bar nightclub use. Clarify that whether on-site or off-site consumption will be allowed is dependent upon the type of liquor license that the operator obtains, and provide that tours and free tastings will be allowed for both minor and major breweries, distilleries, and wineries. The amendments to breweries are primarily for clarity and would result in the only distinction between minor and major breweries being the volume of production. Members, we have also listed on the agenda Council Communication 47, 2023, which includes my recommendations on Chair Waters' proposed amendments. It recommends one friendly amendment to line 1 of Council Communication 43 to revise the capital A small c symbol in the use table legend to mean accessory use subject to standards instead of special accessory use to make it more clear for the reader. I would also like to make 2 verbal amendments to my proposed amendments in Council Communication 40. Firstly, for lines 3 and 4 relating to standards for heliports and helistops, I am recommending adding an exception for emergency rescue and response operations, so the lead-in line would read, except for emergency medical operations and rescue and response operations. And secondly, I am also recommending a revision to the definition of helistop in section 65 of the bill, page 185, to delete the last sentence, which reads, the term includes but is not limited to the commercial use of a drone. By deleting this sentence, there would be no confusion that a drone is not considered a rotorcraft and therefore not subject to the same use standards as helicopters. For the administration, we have Director Don Takeuchi Apuna for the Department of Planning and Permitting.
Aloha, Chair Kiaina, Don Apuna, DPP. I'd just like to say that the industrial zone area, it's only makes up 2% of our overall zones on the island. So it's a very important area that we need to preserve and make sure that those uses are intended for industrial use. But we are supportive of the proposed amendments, and we're available for any questions.
Thank you so much. Members, does anyone have any questions? If not, we will now proceed with remote testimony. If there is anyone standing by remotely, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you. We will now proceed with in-person testimony. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, we have in-person testifiers.
When I call your name, please come forward to the testifier podium and state your name for the record. Jolie Tokusato. And if you could just press the button, you see a red light. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jolie Tokusato. I represent United Local 5 hotel, healthcare, and food service workers across the state. We want to comment on Bill 10 CD2. We appreciate the elimination of references to hotels in B1 and B2 districts in the proposed CD2. And we also appreciate that CD2, all the hotel developments would need conditional use permits, and that the areas where hotels would be allowed are specifically defined in parcel maps. We believe that the proposed hotel developments anywhere should be subject to the discretion of City Council approval and subject to public input and serious considerations of that public input. Our concern for Bill 10 CD2 is that neither minor nor major CUPs are required or require the approval of council. Current law allows some small degree of public input for minor and major permit applications, but the laws need more robust powers for the city to respond to public concerns and also require the developers to respond. So thank you so much for letting me testify.
Thank you for your testimony. Can I ask you, are you testifying for industrial use, or is this in another section?
No, this is just for overall
Okay,
general
thank you.
for the-
Thank you for your testimony. Our staff would be looking at it as we move forward. So at the appropriate time, in the appropriate use section, I
Okay.
would recommend that you also come back and participate. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next testifier is Ivan Ho.
Good morning, Chair Kiaina, Vice Chair Cordero, and members of the committee. My name is Ivan Ho. I'm a research analyst at Local 5 Hotel Workers Union. The previous testifier is my colleague. This is also about Bill 10 in the hotel development context. But I'll try to be very brief. I just want to emphasize one of our concerns about Bill 10. There's a lot in there focused on hotel development. We've worked on this issue for years with past city councils. We've tried to figure out what is an appropriate level of public participation for these very significant projects that affect public planning and our quality of life for local people. The bureaucratic terms minor permit and major permits don't really convey the real world impacts on the community. We believe the public needs more than just a voice on these types of developments. We need actual discretionary approval powers over how these buildings impact our island community. So we just urge City Council to consider the question of whether or not the public, through their elected council members, should have real influence on what our island's going to look like in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you again. Similar to my comments for the previous testifier, when we have a hearing on commercial uses, I would welcome you coming back again, but at least we can take a look at your testimony beforehand. Thank you so much. Clerks, do we have any other in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Sir, if you would come to the podium and state your name for the record.
Good morning, Chair and City Council members. My name is Mike Hamasu. I am the Research and Consulting Director for Colliers, which is a commercial real estate brokerage firm and consulting firm. I'm here to advise the council to let them know that industrial usage at this point is a very limited use that allows, currently our vacancy rate for the industrial marketplace is less than 1%. So any restrictions would impede many industrial businesses from growing and expanding in an economy that might be impacted by a potential recession. So just my concern is just to let you know that the industrial market is very restricted at this point. Any additional restrictions would impede further growth. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Sir, do you have any specific recommendations with regard to the proposed CD2?
The points that you brought up, no. Drone use and so forth do not have any impact on it, but further analysis in regards to any restrictions on the industrial marketplace should be seriously considered.
So please keep in touch with our office if you do dive into the actual text. When we have the next hearing, while we will be focusing on another use, we of course will still be looking at potential modifications to industrial use, separate from what we're going to pass today. So I just want thank you for
Thank you very much.
coming to testify. Are there any other in-person testifiers? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Cordero.
Yes.
Hi, Mike. Thank you very much for your testimony. I have a question regarding industrial use and restrictions. How many of the properties that Colliers oversees or manages are within the TOD areas or TOD zones that are industrial?
Well, we've been monitoring the industrial market for well over 20 years now. In regards to the number of buildings in a TOD section, we haven't done any analysis specifically to that. There's roughly about 1,600 industrial zone buildings island-wide. So, depending on the location of the stations would impact how many buildings are located. But at this point, I have no idea what number is.
Okay, also when you're looking into the text for the LUO2 moving forward, if you could look into the analysis of how the TOD and TOD plans will affect the industrial areas that Colliers oversees as well. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Are there any other in-person, I'm sorry, Councilmember Shea.
Mike, excuse me. Mike, how do you address an issue whereby an industrial service is in a different land use classification, where there is a conflict between the real property tax assessments? What I'm trying to get at is simply put, most of our commercial and industrial properties, not properties, but activities and businesses are all applying for the ag classification zoning, right? And that is inconsistent with our planning. And that's where, Madam Chair, how would we address that issue when you have industrial, manufacturing, production in agricultural lands?
I think that's a good question for Department of Permitting and Planning.
Because right now, Madam Chair, and maybe for the director, the problem for us is that it's not the city, it's the state that allows these permitted uses in ag classification. Any thoughts? And, I don't know what to do because the bill that they have right now from the Office of Energy died in the House and Senate.
So, I mean, if there's uses in the agricultural district that are industrial,
Yes.
and they shouldn't be, then we should do something about it, or they should, if they want to, they should be under the correct classification.
See, that's where, Director, we're having a major discussion and conflict with the state. The state says to Director Apuna, we're going to allow this as a permitted use at the state level. And that's where we have the inconsistency, Mike, in regards to now real property tax. You're in the ag classification, you don't have to pay industrial classification. And that is an issue that I think we should convey to the state also, because then these plans are all inconsistent. If the state of Hawaii, the legislature says, this is a activity, we can do it in agriculture, preservation, or conservation. Any thoughts? That's what I'm trying to figure out at this point, that this conflict can be resolved by the end of the year. And I don't have the answer for industrial. But I know, Mr. Hamasu, industrial property is very, very tight.
Absolutely. As I mentioned, vacancy rates are sub 1%. We were perhaps amongst the tightest market in the entire country.
And if we're talking about, manufacturing, production, value-added types of, how would you say, products? Like, I really love Melly James' pop-ups, makeke. The innovation of what's happening that we are not adjusting to our times. That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Shea.
I think, Madam Chair, Alex had something to say. No, you just wanted to come up?
Okay. Are there any more in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Members, we are in discussion. Any comments? Chair Waters.
Thank you, Chair Kiaina. I really appreciate the way you're doing this, taking the time, breaking it out by session. I did go and talk to Local 5 and said, come back and talk to us at the next hearing, because if we focus on industrial, then we can focus on commercial, focus on residential, focus on ag. all at separate times. I think it's going to be super helpful. I do just want to encourage members to work with the chair to keep this bill together. It's going to take time. We understand that because it is a very complex bill. And I really appreciate today your explanation. I thought that was really thorough and super helpful. So I'm all supportive of you and what you're doing here. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And for all of those who are listening and have provided written testimony, we are in receipt of your testimony. The majority of them are not relating to industrial use, but we will keep this in hand as we move forward at the appropriate time with upcoming hearings, and recommend that you stay engaged and either come and testify in person or testify remotely. There are a lot of recommendations regarding agritourism. With no other comments,
Madam Chair, I have a couple
Council
comments.
Member
Yeah.
Shea.
It really got me excited because maybe at this point in time, would we have a baseline of all industrial zone properties in the urban classification? A baseline of what's the number of acres of industrial, whereby if it's half of 1% of all the lands,
I think the director had said 2%.
2%?
Director, is that correct? You said 2% of all of our lands?
Yeah, yes. Yes, 2%.
Okay, 2%, can I extrapolate it to go one step further? 2% of urban classification and not agricultural classification.
2% of the total acreage of the island, separate from any other zoning district. So I think it's about 8,300 acres, and then our total land area is 383,000 acres.
And that is in the urban classification, no?
I'm sorry, the state,
Yeah.
so under the
land use-
state land use, yes, industrial would be
See,
under.
that's why, Director, I'm concerned. Because private landowners have not gone back to the Land Use Commission to reclassify those type of classifications of ag and conservation to urban.
Right,
Because industrial is a subset of the urban classification, if I stand corrected, like residential, hotels, etc.
right. And I'm not sure what the agricultural district is, but it's a much larger portion of the island, and with important agricultural lands and programs like that, we should be able to say what is important for ag, and the rest can be used for other uses like industrial, maybe even affordable housing.
Now, I just want to help you folks out as far as getting the real property taxes from these type of activities that are occurring in these other types of land use classifications outside of urban. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Any other comments? Chair Waters.
Not so much of a comment, but just maybe a following up on what Councilmember Say is talking about with DPP. Are we saying that there's industrial uses currently in ag, which is on the conservation district according to the State Land Use Commission? Is that what you're getting at?
What I was getting at is just that the developers or producers of these type of industrial services, to me, are bypassing our land use commission and going straight to say, legislature, we want this permitted use in ag. But that's where we have the conflict, Chair, because we're not getting the real property taxes that we so desire in regards to the industrial classification. So what do we do to resolve this? Because on one hand, you have the land use, okay, the zoning, et cetera. On the other hand, you have your real property tax division. There is that inconsistency now. And how to resolve it, I really don't know. But I think the chair will do a good job in trying to find the answer to that problem. Okay, Madam Chair?
Absolutely.
Well, two things. One, I was thinking about this morning as I was ironing my clothes. The idea here is we're making the law clearer so that users, whether it's industrial, commercial, ag, know what they can and cannot do. That's part of, I think, what we're doing here. The other thing is, I just want to make a comment that perhaps Budget and Fiscal Services, Steve Takara, work with DPP to identify exactly which parcels are paying what tax and make sure that DPP then enforces that. Because what we're told by BNF is that they do not go and enforce this. You can enforce it through the proper tax, but I think they need DPP to work with them to figure out if they're paying the proper tax. But one hand's not talking to the other. But anyway, my manao, thanks.
Thank you so much. I want to welcome Councilmember Okimoto. Councilmember, we are right about to take action. Did you have any comments on what we are discussing with regard to industrial uses? Thank you so much.
Madam Chair, I have a couple more because I am very much concerned because I do have industrial zone property.
Sure. So do you have some more comments?
Yeah. One
Okay.
of the other comments I would like to
Okay.
make for the consideration of the committee is that we look forward to trying to determine how we can increase the acreage of industrial, because that will give us the opportunity, what Mr. Hamasu said, of more economic development. You know, the value-added type of kitchens, jobs, etc. That's what I'm looking forward to, and maybe some form of heavy metal manufacturing or recycling. That's all the type of topics that I have as far as, I don't know. If I was a private landowner, I wouldn't go before the Land Use Commission. It takes 30 years to reclassify.
Thank you.
Very,
Thank
very
you
honestly
for sharing
and
that,
sincerely. But
Councilmember Shea.
I like to have that goal that we increase the acres of industrial zone properties. So that-
Duly noted. And, as I asked yesterday, I don't know, from the Maui informational briefing before budget, Maui's taxed nearly $5 lower than Oahu for industrial use. If there are no other recommendations or comments, the chair recommends that the version of Bill 10, 2022, CD2, that was approved by the Committee on Zoning and Planning at its meeting on October 20, 2022, OCS 2022-0850/11/3/2022, 3:01 p.m. be further amended by incorporating all of Chair Waters' proposed amendments in CC 43, 2023, as further amended as we discussed regarding line 1 to revise the capital A, small c symbol in the legend to mean accessory use subject to standards instead of special accessory use. Incorporating all of my proposed amendments in Council Communication 40 as further amended as we discussed regarding lines 3 and 4 to revise the standards for heliports and helistops by adding an exception for emergency rescue and response operations. So the lead-in line reads, except for emergency medical operations and rescue and response operations. By making the verbal amendment we discussed to revise the definition of helistop to delete the last sentence, which reads, the term includes but is not limited to the commercial use of a drone. Any discussion, objections, reservations? Hearing none, the bill has been amended to a CD2. Chair then recommends that action on Bill 10, 2022, CD2 be postponed to the Planning and the Economy Committee meeting on April 6, 2023. Any further discussion, objections, reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. I will make public a clean version of the CD2 that was approved by the committee today, which will give everyone time to review the bill once again. The committee, at its meeting on April 6, 2023, will be considering proposed amendments to this CD2 version of the bill with a focus on commercial uses. We will follow the same procedures to propose commercial use amendments to the CD2 by filing amendment forms with the clerk's office. Thank you so much. Moving on to agenda item number 2. Update on Resolution 22-207, urging the City Administration and the Liquor Commission to take action to restore public trust in the Liquor Commission, including systemic review of enforcement services section capabilities and practices, and delegation to the city administration to retain an independent contractor to investigate complaints. As a reminder, members, the council passed Resolution 22-207 on October 5th, 2022, to urge the Commission and the administration to take action to address concerns and allegations raised about actions of some of the staff at the Liquor Commission. Since then, I understand that the Liquor Commission has been working hard to find an administrator, and the city administration has been working diligently to identify commissioners to fill open seats, as well as provide support to the Liquor Commission to evaluate the enforcement services section and to create a process to follow up on complaints. Mahalo to the acting director, the commissioners, and the administration for what you have done thus far to address the concerns that have been raised. As I've said before, the work that the Liquor Commission does is so incredibly important to public health and safety and to our economy. And so I look forward to hearing more details about what steps have been taken to create a stronger Liquor Commission. Before Deputy Managing Director Krishna Jayaram goes into more details, I did want to note for the members that the administration has assigned Hui Chen, the strategic advisor to the managing director, to work on the systemic review. For those that don't know, Hui, she previously served as a compliant expert at the U.S. Department of Justice in the fraud section, which included programs in the area of anti-fraud and anti-bribery kickbacks. Thank you for joining us today, Deputy Managing Director.
Good morning, Vice Chair. Good morning, Council Chair Waters, and good morning, Council members. Thank you for having me here today to share with you an update on the Honolulu Liquor Commission. With me here today is the Assistant Administrator, Anna Hirai, as well. So Council member, thank you for this opportunity to share on what we're doing with respect to the Liquor Commission. As the Vice Chair noted, it's an incredibly important agency in the city. 1.3 billion in gross liquor sales, over 20,000 employees that are licensed with that are recorded with the Honolulu Liquor Commission. We're 1,400 licensees. So this is incredibly important. As the Vice Chair shared, Resolution 22-207 CD1 was passed in October, and my takeaway of the resolution was that the City Council had serious concerns about the performance of the Liquor Commission. Additionally, there's an urging of the establishment of both inside and outside resources to review the functioning of that agency and to look into adopting policies and procedures to restore trust in that agency. So this is what we're working off of, and so this passed in October. In December of this year, we were nearing the 90-day deadline to respond to the City Council on steps taken. And what we did was we wrote to the City Council to inform you that from our perspective, leadership was so important. And there's an open position in terms of the top leadership at the agency, in that the administrator position was open. So what we asked from the City Council was we wanted to focus on improvement from the inside. We wanted to focus on the Liquor Commission hiring an administrator, and then we would work with that individual, and from 60 days from that hiring, we would come back to the City Council with a fuller presentation. So that was the goal that we had in mind. The Liquor Commission at that point was fully in the process of looking at hiring an administrator, and so this was the communication we provided back in December. What ended up happening was the Liquor Commission did conduct their search, and they narrowed it down to their top 2 candidates. And given the importance of this agency to the city, the mayor requested the opportunity to have a meeting with those candidates and offer his thoughts to the Liquor Commission for their evaluation. The Liquor Commission is somewhat unusual. It is, its rules and laws are in the state statutes, and the mayor is not part of the decision-making for the administrator position. But given the importance of this position, given our representation that we wanted to come in with leadership to fix the situation over there, the mayor requested permission from the Liquor Commission to offer his thoughts. And so he sent them a letter. It was publicly posted. They talked about it at an agendized meeting, and they granted him the permission to meet with the top 2 candidates. So he did. And he also offered his his thoughts on the candidates, which is also publicly made. Unfortunately, the day the Liquor Commission chose the individual they wanted to be the administrator, I think that day, the day after that, that individual withdrew. The good news was that the second candidate was also strong. And so we spent, and by we, I mean myself as well as the liquor commissioners, we spent several weeks talking to that second candidate as well. That second candidate ultimately withdrew as well. So that put us in a position of determining what to do now. The Liquor Commission did meet last week, and they're going to move forward, obviously, with a continued search. But the discussion that the administration had with the commissioners was, we got to do something differently. We went through sort of our process, which was to advertise as widely as possible, neighbor islands here, and we got a pool of candidates. The top two candidates didn't work out. We have to do something differently. So the Liquor Commission is looking at hiring an agency to go out and do a recruitment, maybe look more nationwide, maybe talk to the stakeholders, which are the licensees, the city council, admin, HPD, and have a deeper understanding of what might be needed for that position, and hire a professional firm to come in and help do that. So that's an ongoing discussion we're having with them. I think that's the right thing to do at this point. But that's where we're at. We had two candidates, both of them withdrew. So at this point, our goal was to have somebody to come in a leadership position, work with that person. That person is not there yet, so we had to pivot to action. So what we're doing is, what I'm going to relate to you now is what we are doing now. Step one. So we are going to do a systems review of the enforcement division at the Liquor Commission. I appeared before the Liquor Commission several weeks ago because we wanted this to be a joint undertaking. We were not imposing this on them. So I wanted to have a discussion with the commissioners to make sure that they were comfortable with this. We want to respond to ongoing complaints about the enforcement section, assess their capabilities and practices, and formulate recommendations on how we could improve that section. The commissioners welcomed this undertaking, and so they authorized us to move ahead. This slide is a little busy, so I apologize, but this just lays out what we're going to be doing. There's going to be a document collection process, there's going to be an interview process, and there'll be follow-up, and then we're going to look into providing reports and recommendations on what we find. The reports and recommendations will, of course, be public, and I want to emphasize that this is a systemic review. It is not a review or an investigation or fact-finding into individualized complaints. I did share what we're doing here with the city auditor as well ahead of time, because I wanted her to have awareness of what we're doing, because I know that this is similar to what her office does. And she did have discussions, and she traded emails with the individual who's undertaking this review. So I think we're synced up in that manner. And as the vice chair was kind enough to note, this particular systemic review we're going to do internally. Hui Chen is a strategic advisor to the managing director. She is a global expert on compliance and ethics. We have full confidence in her ability to do this type of review. So we're very pleased that we have somebody of that caliber who can do this for us in this very important agency. So the systemic review is one part of it. The next part of it is all the complaints we've been receiving. And so we've received complaints, and by we, I mean the MDO and the mayor. We've been CC'd here and there on complaints. Some complaints go to the Liquor Commission, so we've tried to corral all of them. Some of them go to the Corporation Counsel's office. So we're going to respond to complaints that were received from September of 22 to February of 23. The complaints originate from one primary source, an individual, but there are other individuals who sign on to the complaints, but I just want you to have that awareness. Because the Liquor Commission is understaffed, and by understaffed I mean at the executive level leadership. We do not have an administrator, we do not have a chief investigator, and their ASO is a current TA ASO. For that reason, and because of the nature of the complaints, we went to the Liquor Commission. I went to the Liquor Commission and I'm sorry because the days kind of fly by, either last week or the week before, and I asked them to authorize us to undertake this investigation. So what that means is the Liquor Commission will be funding this investigation, but it'll be contracted out of the Managing Director's office, and we will be supervising and monitoring the contractor. So with respect to this effort, the RFQ is currently being drafted. The RFQ will require the contractor to review all of the complaints, to prepare an investigative plan, to collect all the necessary data, interview all the necessary personnel, and report back on all of the complaints. The timeline for how this will happen is being developed now. I intend to issue this RFQ within this month, and we intend, assuming that we get qualified individuals responding, to have this in place within 30 to 45 days thereafter. The other piece of this is what we can do at the Liquor Commission itself, and this is a discussion that Managing Director and I had with the Assistant Administrator, excuse me, and that's to look at training. And I think this is an area where the Liquor Commission hasn't been as strong as it could be. And so we would like to reinvest in the staff and focus on best practices and get them out to talk to their colleagues in the neighbor islands, to get them out to the mainland to see how the mainland jurisdictions do it. And one thing I'd like to note for the council members, and I apologize if you already know this, our Liquor Commission is somewhat unique in the country. Most of the other liquor regulatory authorities on the mainland are at the state level. We're somewhat unique in that we have a state statute, but county liquor commissions. So I'd like our personnel to get out there, get out to the mainland, and have these discussions with their peers, and get a better understanding what best practices are. So this is another focus and action that we're taking. And finally, this last slide is the longer term, council members. And so we're thinking through how to do this. It depends in part on actions 1, 2, and 3, but we will, of course, be actively supporting the Liquor Commission in their search. So this is a priority for us. I myself am involved. I'm getting our DHR director involved, our BFS director involved. So we need to get an administrator in place. So we will put all our effort into making sure this happens in a timely fashion. When I look at the council's reso, it's clear that there's structural changes that need to happen and cultural changes that need to happen. Longer term, that is something that we want to focus on. But we really do believe that we need to identify that administrator and work through with that person, he or she, to make sure that we're all on the same page and we can move forward together. And that is my last slide, council members. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Before we open up the questions, I just want to commend the administration. I know that it wasn't easy when the first and then the second candidate withdrew. I don't believe it wasn't because you guys haven't tried hard. I think you've been working very hard, including the administrator. And so out of all of, first of all, I like all of your actionable items, and I especially like the reinvestment into staff. And for any staff who are out there listening, you are a valued member of the city and county of Honolulu. I know that there are always two sides of the story, so notwithstanding complaints, I know that you wake up every day and are doing your best to go out there to work on behalf of the people of Honolulu. And so hopefully with assistance from the administration, we can all be in the same direction at just trying to strengthen the capacities of the staff as well as the commission as a whole. So thank you so much. Members, any questions? Councilmember Wire.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Deputy Managing Director. Just wanted to ask regarding the complaints received from September 2022 to February 2023, how was that date range selected?
That date range, so the February reflects the last complaint we received, so that's easy. The September reflects the first time that we were, I believe the first time that we sort of came onto our radar. And we sort of tried to track backwards and make sure we captured this particular complainant's complaints. And if I might, just to the Vice Chair's point, and I thank you, Vice Chair, for making that, and I should have made the same. You're right, the Liquor Commission is full of dedicated, wonderful employees, and none of this is meant to in any way be a judgment on them at all, but just that we're trying to figure things out and make things better. So thank you for making that comment.
I appreciate that and agree with Chair. We met with the Liquor Commission staff and appreciate everything that the administration is doing to, I think, rebuild public trust or at least improve the image that we're seeing. How many vacancies are there on the Liquor Commission right now? You might have said, but.
They're at 53 positions, 34, so around a 43% vacancy at this time.
Okay, that's for staffing.
Yes, I'm sorry, were you asking about the commission?
Yeah, so how,
on the
no, that's good to know too. So 43% vacancy rate for the staffing and then the commission itself.
So for the commission, it's a 5-member commission. We have 3 commissioners right now. Oh, sorry, we have 4 commissioners, but one of them is a holdover, so we're looking for 2 commissioners.
Okay, how is that process going?
It's difficult.
Yeah.
I know that the council members hear about this, but when we have departments or agencies that are in the news that are the subject of criticism, it makes it more challenging to find a volunteer from the public to say, yeah, I want to join this and be subjecting myself to the same criticism. So it is a challenge. I don't want to lie about it. At the same time, we're always optimistic that we'll have somebody who wants to serve and who relishes a challenge. And so if there's somebody out there who any of you know who might be appropriate for this, we're looking for somebody who values transparency, who values equity, who has real world business experience. If there's anybody out there that fits the bill that you think you could encourage to apply, I would welcome that. So please let me know.
I appreciate that a lot. And then just finally, given that you brought up equity, I was curious if, and I think that the complaints, at least those that I've seen, I know that the Liquor Commission probably has others that I haven't gotten to review, but the one that was at least filed in court, there's a lot of different issues that come up, right? And so I'm wondering if the administration has contemplated potential additions or modifications to staff training, not just at the Liquor Commission, but even at the citywide, right?
So thank you for that question, Council Member. In terms of that particular lawsuit catching our attention, whether we think citywide training is available, I don't think so. I think we do a good job on those issues. There's always room for improvement, so I want to caveat it that way. As far as the Liquor Commission, that's certainly one of the things that the systemic review is supposed to look at, whether there are issues within the commission that we should be focused on in that respect.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I just ask, because I know Chair, has frequently brought up like gender equity on commissions. I know when we're looking at gender identity, sexual orientation, I think there's a lot of information out there that could be useful for city employees to know, to be able to engage with our whole community, right, respectfully.
Thank you, Councilmember. And one thing that I will note that we're focused on and we've been focused on is we do want our boards and commissions, which are volunteer boards and commissions, to be representative of the community that we serve. And so we do look for gender equity. We do look for a diversity of views on our boards and commissions. So in addition to all the other qualities that I mentioned, if there are folks out there that you know who represent these underrepresented communities, by all means, if we could let us know, please.
Appreciate that. Mahalo, Chair.
Councilmember Okimoto.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Managing Director, Deputy Managing Director. I think my colleague here kind of asked, but you mentioned the 2 candidates that withdrew. I think what I heard was that the difficulties are just staffing, but what were the main obstacles? Why are they accepting it and then not, in the end, accepting the administrator position? So when we know what we were looking for.
Thank you for the question. So I want to be mindful of their privacy. I'm not exactly sure what they feel comfortable sharing or not, but for both of them, it was
In general, what are the obstacles?
It was
with the
personal.
position?
It was they cited personal reasons for ultimately not being able to.
So not specifically to the position, but
They never said that it's because of the criticism, the scrutiny, none of that. In fact, when we met with them, they accepted that that was going to be part of the job. So when they withdrew, it was about
Okay.
personal reasons.
okay, thank you. And have you guys found any way to decrease the application time or process for licensing?
The licensing for the liquor licenses.
Yes.
If you're asking generally, I would defer to the assistant administrator in terms of process improvements that might be taking place. Would you?
Is that, thank you for patronizing my questions. I'm never sure exactly who the questions are for, but just in general.
And just to be clear, I think the question is whether we're looking at a decreasing licensing times
right, in the
for
process
applicants.
Right.
This is on, right? It's on. Okay, because I always make that mistake. Good morning. Thank you for that question. I'm Anna Hurai. I'm the Assistant Administrator of the Liquor Commission. With respect to your question, when we were conducting our one-on-one meetings with various council members, and I can provide this to you after when I get back to the office, it's a sort of a one-page Liquor Commission at a glance. And I identified different areas that have been of interest lately. Statistics about us, enforcement, and also licensing. So on this particular sheet, I did not include front counter and audit because we are not having a lot of inquiry with respect to those functions right now. So we are showing our average intake per month in licensing is approximately 75 items, comprised of new applications, transfer applications, and about 80% of other types, stock transfers, officer director changes. And our applications in the queue as of January 23, regrettably, is approximately 268. We do realize that we have a backlog that we are working through. We have one of the permanent licensing investigators who is currently on military leave. While he is on that leave, we are not able to fill that position. We are attempting to explore both TAs into that position, and we have also offered to the licensing supervisor the ability to hire on contract temporarily just to help with some of the backlog, so that is in process. In addition, as of January 1 was the effective date of Act 76, which was passed in the session law, last year's session laws. And what that act did, among many things, is it basically sort of laser focused what licensing investigators are supposed to include in their investigative report, making some extremely objective guardrails in terms of what is to be contained and eliminating other things that were more subjective. So we are confident that that is going to reduce the time from application to preliminary and public hearing on licensing applications. We're, in fact, it's one of our performance metrics is we want to establish a baseline since Act 76 went into effect, which is January 1. Establish a baseline in terms of what our processing time is so that we can establish improvement metrics. So that's basically, we're aware of that, the backlog, and that is difficult for applicants. We're trying to address it the best we can. And we do think with a combination of if we can get an additional either TA or contract into that temporarily vacant position, and using the Act 76 kind of laser focus, that we should be able to make some measurable headway.
Thank you. And on average, about how long does it take? I know there's a backlog now, but on average, how long does it take when you have not a 268 in the queue for an license to go through?
What we used to say is basically if, when the application hits our front counter and is accepted and there are no outstanding issues and it's not, doesn't have, it's not in an area that is going to require extraordinary help, it would take about 3 months because there's a mandatory wait period between the prelim and the public hearing, 45 days. So we used to say 3 to 4 months. That is probably, we're not able to hit that measure anymore. And that's assuming that the application hits us complete. And oftentimes, sometimes an application will stall out because the applicant itself has got to pull back and ask us to wait or is having difficulty providing a required item.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other members? Chair Waters.
Not so much, well, actually it is a question, a comment followed by a question. So first off, I think this is definitely a step in the right direction. Action 1, bringing on Hui Chen, Strategic Advisor to the Managing Director. It's a really good idea. Everything that I've heard about this person is that she's really, really impressive. So I love that idea. Action 2, hiring a separate investigator to look at complaints about employees, right? It's the whole idea was you don't want the fox guarding the hen house. I think this was part of an audit that we did years ago. So thank you very much for doing that. And then of course, action 3, training. I think constant training is important, especially for this department. So my question is, does this year's budget request reflect what we see here in this paperwork? Because this complaint investigation needs to be ongoing, right? It cannot just stop between September 2022 and February 2023, you know what I mean? It has to be ongoing, and training has to be ongoing, and the budget should reflect that. And we're happy to approve that because, like you said, this department generates quite a bit of money. And we're happy to approve that. So that's my question. Does the budget reflect these priorities?
Chair, thank you for the question and for the comments as well. We agree with all of that. The training component, we met with the assistant liquor administrator early in the budget process as this was all developing, and we did ask her to focus on that piece. So it will be a component of the budget that you will see. We feel that it's an adequate budget that will allow for an increased amount of training. We will sort of gauge how that goes this year, whether we need more next year, whether we got the right kind of training. So thank you for that comment, and that'll be certainly something that you folks will see. As far as the investigation piece, that's a really interesting piece. You're right. We need to do our investigations better in general. I think that's true. In this particular case, because these complaints came from one individual with other signatories, we thought that it was a unique universe that it made sense to give to one contractor to handle. As far as other complaints that may come in, and I will note, Chair, that in the reso talks about an ombudsman. The reso talks about the possibility of an internal investigator. The reso talks about internal controls division at BFS being more actively involved. So those are all things that we're thinking through and talking through now. We're trying to figure out how we can systematize this, the investigation, the fact-finding in a way that makes sense. Because I will share with you that this investigation, it's going to cost a lot of money. If we did it internally and we just don't have the bandwidth to do it internally right now, it'd be something that we could work into the budget and figure out. But as we contract it out, it's going to be fairly expensive. That's our best guess, looking at the breadth and scope of the complaint. So we're trying to figure that out, and trying to figure out how we make sure we have objective, arm's length investigations that make sense. If we were to contract every single one of these investigations out, no matter how Manini, it would be extraordinarily expensive. So we're trying to figure that out right now, and I'd appreciate an opportunity to talk to you and your staff more about that if that's something you'd be interested in talking about.
I understand what you're saying, and it makes complete sense. And it is expensive, but I think it might be worth it. The other thing is perhaps having someone maybe within the managing director's office who just handles the investigations, somebody outside of the department, in another department. I think that's what you're getting at.
Thank you for that comment. That's exactly it. So we're looking at different options where that function, if we want to create that function, where that function could lie, what resources that function will need. So that will not be part of this year's discussion, but that's something that we're developing and thinking through. And really, this is a case study for us in terms of how that function could have applied in this area.
Yeah, just the last comment. Thank you very much for taking this seriously. We all have been getting complaints lately about the department, and it was reflected in our resolution. So the fact that you folks are doing what it says here today, really appreciate the effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councilmember Cordero?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Deputy Managing Director, in relation to the 3 action steps, did you refer to the audit to include in each of the steps?
Thank you, Councilmember. So we did review the audits. Hui and myself looked through them. And in formulating these steps, we thought about what would be most executable right away, and that would be helpful to an incoming administrator. So we thought that step action 1, the systemic review, we thought that would be helpful to the incoming administrator. We thought the investigations piece we could just take off of Liquor Commission so that the incoming investigator doesn't have to address it right away. There are sort of fundamental things in the audit that we're going to address once that administrator is identified, and that's more of the structural issues, the procedural issues, and really the cultural issues that may be there.
Thank you. And for the action 1, the timeline that you have are like from, timing 2 to 4 weeks, and then interviews 2 to 3 weeks, follow-up 1 to 2 weeks. Does that mean the reporting and recommendations or reporting back to the council or informing the council in some way, shape, or form will be within the 3 months, like after 3 months of that?
That is the goal. Okay. So right now we're already in step 1, the document data collection. So the documents are already being reviewed. Next week, I believe Ms. Chen will be at Liquor Commission, so she'll be also starting the interview process. The report, when it's final, we will share it with the Liquor Commission as well as the City Council, and it'll be publicly available.
Okay, thank you. And have you assessed going to the, oh, shucks, where did I have that? The amount that will be funded by the Liquor Commission but contracted out by MDO, will it be the full amount funded by the Liquor Commission? And do you know how much that it possibly could be?
So we're going through what procurement calls a request for qualifications process. Mm-hmm. So what the request for qualifications process does is it lays out the full scope of what we're asking for and requests respondents to provide their qualifications, their past experience, et cetera. And so there'll be a review and selection committee that will choose a top respondent. Once that top respondent is chosen, we're going to sit down with that entity on a confidential basis. We will be sharing the complaints, and then we'll be having a discussion about cost.
Okay.
And then we'll see if we can agree on the cost. So I do not have today a dollar amount that I would feel comfortable saying this is likely to range.
Okay, thank you. I was just looking if it was in the 3 months, that means we wouldn't be using any surplus or extra funding from this current fiscal year. So we're looking into the next fiscal year then.
That's a good question. I think we will aim to get it from this fiscal year because we still have enough time, and this is a priority. Uh-huh. But you're right. Depending on the timing, it might slip to the fiscal year 24.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Managing Director. If you could just keep us apprised of all that timing, especially for the funding wise. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Councilmember Shea.
Yes, Deputy Managing Director, what is the timeline for the hiring of the new administrator?
That's a great question, Councilmember Say. So the Liquor Commission right now, and we agree, is inclined to find a recruiting entity to assist. That involves procurement. That involves however long that time takes. We will work with the commission to keep it as short as possible. I do not have a hard date right now for you today.
Okay, thank you. The next question, may I proceed on? May I ask Ms. Hirai? Before I begin, let me say thank you very much, Ms. Hirai, for the WebEx meeting that we had in regards to your presentation on the Liquor Commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, number two, how many years have you been with the Liquor Commission?
Actually, yesterday I celebrated my 23rd anniversary. There's only one individual there that has been there at this point longer than I, and I can't believe I've actually reached that point where I'm the second.
23 years. 23 years.
Yes.
So maybe at this point in time, we should consider you to be the permanent director.
I thank you for that compliment. I'll comment that my particular skill set is really designed to be the number two. It seriously, in terms of my technical knowledge, my substantive knowledge, my somewhat limited social skills, I am really designed for that number two position. And I have successfully served as number two to 4 administrators. I think.
Well, no, very seriously, because with your years of background, number one, your experience, number two, and number three, your relationships with your employees has made a major part in keeping the commission and the operations of this commission moving forward. And that's the reason why I thought it would be great that you maybe consider it. And I would like to make a motion as a precursor to a confirmation hearing, Madam Chair. I'm only joking. Thank you. I was waiting for the chair to second my motion, but he's busy.
Are you finished?
Yes,
Councilmember
I'm finished, but
Okay.
coming from the old school, I always believed in bottoms up, meaning
Okay.
working your way up to the top. And internally, that's the best approach as far as how I've seen, the morale of a particular agency really benefit from seeing a fellow employee moving up the chain of command. And I thought you would be a great nominee for that.
Has been to, during entries and departures of various administrators, to keep the doors open and the engines running, because we are funded and hired by our licensee base, and that's what's important. And I think all challenges notwithstanding, we've been able to continue to do that without a break in service.
Thank you.
And I do, if I could, this is off topic, but I wanted to just, this is a little bit of information for Chair Waters, who can kind of just listen in the background. At one time, we had on contract a retired HPD who is dedicated to doing internal investigations for us. And that was very convenient because she was worked on demand. All right, so at the end of last year, she said that she was not going to be able to re-up that contract for personal reasons. We are currently, we have got some internal investigations that do need to be conducted. We referred those out, and just to give you a rough idea of how much this might cost is basically one claim that needs to be investigated, and the current quote is about $5,000. So just in terms of that perspective, and I have every confidence in this. This company is on the city's preferred vendor list and all that kind of stuff. It's just that's how much it costs.
Chair Waters, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. but we got to do it. You know, it's just one of those
yes.
things that we have to do. If it costs $5,000, which arguably that's quite reasonable for what we're asking them to do. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
And if I could just make a final comment with respect to the effort that's going to be conducted via the MD's office, and we'll have this conversation offline, and I'm saying this on behalf of our licensees. 281-17.5 is fairly specific in terms of how special fund monies can be used. So just as if everyone, they're aware of it and everyone's aware of it, and I want the licensees to know that I made that mention.
Could you give us that citation again? HRS what?
281-17.5.
0.5. Okay, I'll definitely look into that.
Sub B. And there is elasticity in that language, but everyone needs to keep that in mind as we go forward with how to pay for this effort.
No, I appreciate that. Have you consulted Corporation Counsel as to whether or not using the special fund money for internal investigations under 281-17.5 is a legal use of the funds?
It is just recent, that question has surfaced, so it's on their radar to.
He's sitting right behind you.
Well, not
Corporation
Dwayne
Counsel,
specifically, but it's been gone up the chain.
But you know what I'm saying, right? We should get a legal opinion on that 10 years ago. But only now it's being surfaced?
Well, this particular type of investigation has not been done before, where
No, I guess that's part of the point, right? The whole audit said, we want you to do these independent investigations, right? And that audit was old, right? But anyway, I appreciate the effort. I think it's money well spent. It brings transparency, independence, and I think you or Krishna just mentioned that there's people on the list that we can access to do this, whether it's an attorney or someone else. By the way, hiring an attorney might be kind of expensive, but way more than $5,000. So good job, $5,000, I think.
Okay, thank you, Chair Waters. Councilmember Wara, did you have any comments? Okay, thank you so much. And Councilmember Say, I will not be complicit in peer pressuring the Deputy Director to take the administrator job. If there's no, did you have any final comments, Deputy Managing Director? Because I'm going to move forward with remote testimony.
No final comments.
Clerks, we will now proceed with remote testimony. Are there any, is there anyone standing by remotely? If so, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers?
Yes, we have remote testifiers, Chair.
Angela Young. Good morning.
Good morning. Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and the committee. Today's my birthday, by the way.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And I'm not going to go to like one of those clubs or bars. I'm going to a classy place, the State Art Museum. It's very family-friendly vibes.
And your clock is ticking, okay? Your clock is ticking.
Okay. So the Liquor Commission is very strict upon businesses and establishments because a lot of establishments may or may not have underage drinking, right? But whose fault is that? How do you expect people to know what's legal? Is it the establishment's fault, the door guy's fault? You know, that's something about our modern culture. How do you change the way people behave? In this particular appeal that led to this conversation, there was no evidence of underage drinking or illegal activities. There was no documentation or witness reports. It was only allegations, suspicions, and speculations. And without legitimate evidence or witness reports, aggressive investigation can constitute as harassment and discrimination. And so although there is justification for why the Liquor Commission is strict, there's no justification for discrimination if there is no evidence, right? Because there was evidence about discrimination upon the gay bartender.
If you could wrap up your testimony, please.
Okay, I will conclude. It was documented and witnessed. People saw him or her getting harassed and subjected to discrimination. And so the Liquor Commission needs to look for someone who knows the law, who can train people to identify discrimination, to balance relationships, and do what's right. Thank you.
Thank you, and happy birthday again.
Thank you.
We will now proceed with in-person testimony. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Members, we are in discussion. If there are no other comments, thank you so much for coming today, Deputy Managing Director and Deputy Administrator. We are going to move on to agenda item number 3. Update on the Work Hawaii Division programs, including job readiness, preparation, rent to work, ticket to work, vocational rehabilitation employment, youth services center. Members, the city's Work Hawaii Division, which is a part of the Department of Community Services, oversees a number of programs specifically dedicated to growing a quality, robust workforce for Honolulu. And I know that for some programs, their team works with individuals that experience challenges like homelessness and incarceration. All of their programs helps to fill the various needs of employers looking to fill positions. So mahalo to Administrator Lena Ala Nakamura and the Work Hawaii staff for their efforts to strengthen Hawaii's economy, and particularly for working with populations that may have otherwise had difficulty securing employment. Mahalo for coming today to share more about your programs, Administrator.
Aloha, Chair Kia Aina, Chair Waters, Council members, staff, and community members. I am Lena Ala Nakamura, Work Hawaii's Division Chief. Mahalo for the opportunity to provide updates on the Work Hawaii's programs. Our main hub of services and activities is at our Dole Cannery office, pictured here. At Dole, 3 state agencies are co-located with us who also provide employment services and workforce development activities. These agencies are the Department of Labor, Workforce Development Division, the Department of Education's Community Schools for Adults, and the Department of Human Services Division of Vocational Rehab, or otherwise known as DVR. Since DVR is the primary ticket to work program, Work Hawaii does not operate a standalone ticket to work program. Instead, we refer individuals with disabilities to DVR to receive additional services beyond the services we provide at Work Hawaii. Work Hawaii also provides services at our Waianae Work Hawaii office, which is located in the Waianae Neighborhood Community Center, and at 4 state offices, pictured here. At Dole Cannery, our staff at the Resource Center assist job seekers with the submission of their online job applications, register for unemployment insurance benefits, update their resumes, and participate in virtual job interviews. We also have the capacity to provide these services to individuals who are hearing or visually impaired. We cannot do our work alone. Therefore, our partners are critical to the success of the community members we serve. With these city partners, we are helping to fill city vacancies, create city internships, and assist job seekers with multiple barriers to employment. With these city partners, we are providing low-income individuals and families, including kupuna, with housing assistance through programs that will be further described in this presentation. Today, I will provide updates on these 6 sections and programs to include a brief description of the services, success stories, and numbers served in FY22 and thus far in FY23. Numbers served represents individuals who are enrolled in our programs and are striving towards attaining their employment, education, or housing goals. This year, in this fiscal year, thus far, we have served individuals from ages 10 to 77. At the American Job Center Hawaii, we have the experience to provide these services listed here to a wide range of individuals, including those transitioning back into the community from incarceration, those with or without work experience, and those with or without college degrees. Our AJCH participants have aspirations to increase their earnings by securing new jobs or transitioning to new careers. The woman pictured here is a single parent who dreamed of becoming a dental assistant. The gentleman pictured here wanted to advance his career from being a medical receptionist to a medical assistant. Both completed their trainings and have found employment in their respective fields. At Work Hawaii's hiring events at the Dole Cannery, we enjoy connecting employers to job seekers who have the talents and skills that will enhance the employer's workforce. We are very excited to work closely with the Department of Education to implement a hiring event for the graduating high school seniors. All participating employers have committed to seriously considering these young men and women for hire. At this time, we have 9 high schools and 42 employers registered, and anticipate more schools and employers to join us soon. Team Work Hawaii. The team provides outreach and case management services to communities throughout the island. Our outreach map shown here allows us to identify who the partners are in the various sections. Our unsheltered outreach missions are conducted with HPDs, community policing teams, the Department of Land and Natural Resources, and the Department of Hawaii Homelands. By conducting our missions with these agencies, we are able to disseminate information immediately to community members after they have been encountered by these agencies. As mentioned, partners are critical to the success of our community members we serve. Listed are some of the partners in the 5 different sections that we provide outreach to. This gentleman was unhoused for 10+ years and struggling with substance use. Initially, he was resistant to the team's help. Through persistent follow-up, the team was able to gain his trust and house him in 3 months of their first encounter with him. This gentleman completed job readiness training while in Waiava. His case manager helped him secure the resources to rejoin his family in the mainland and prepare for his future job search. At this time, he's a CDL driver and has his own place in Washington State. The aim of our Rent to Work program is to best prepare individuals and families to sustain their own housing after program completion by offering these services listed here. The program's employment and savings requirements motivated the gentleman to stay employed, the woman to enroll in college, and after they completed the program, they continue to be housed without a subsidy. The aim of the Work Hawaii Youth Program is to help the participants establish a career pathway by providing these services. The average length of training is 12 months, followed by a year of continuous support and mentoring by staff. The woman pictured here attained her GED and completed office administration and technology training. She currently is employed as a senior clerk typist with the city's medical examiner's department. The gentleman attained his GED and decided to enroll in advanced training with Hawaii Job Corps Center. in the construction training pathway, his aspiration is to be a journey-leveled painter. Here are a few of our programs listed by elements: work experience, education, and occupational training. The Juvenile Justice Center is an opportunity for youth to receive services to keep them from further involvement in the justice system. All youth are referred by HPD after the young person has been arrested. After receiving counseling from the Juvenile Justice Center counselor, the youth and parents are contacted once a month for a 3-month period to ascertain if additional services are needed to keep the young person from further involvement in the justice system. The juvenile justice partners include 3 juvenile justice agencies and 1 therapeutic counseling agency that provides additional counseling if needed. For nearly 30 years, the State Department of Human Services has partnered with us to provide services for their TANF clients through their First to Work program. Additionally, for 11 years, we have partnered with the DHS Division of Voc Rehab to provide services for their youth and adult clients who are individuals with disabilities. The woman pictured here struggled with substance use when she enrolled in the program. After completing a self-assessment and the job readiness training, she realized she had strengths, she had skills and valuable work experience. Today, she is working on attaining her GED through Waipahu Community Schools for Adults. This single parent entered the program struggling with substance use and convinced that she had no future. Through the support of her grandmother and the program, she became committed to creating a better life for herself and for her children. Today, she is sober and on a pathway to become a tattoo artist. We work closely with the DOE transition counselors and teachers to serve youth with disabilities at these 5 high schools. Newly blind individuals are short-term housed at apartments managed by DVR, where they learn how to complete daily tasks such as cooking and cleaning. They also learn how to read Braille and use walking canes on nearby streets. Mahalo for your time, but more importantly, mahalo to all of my Work Hawaii colleagues, my colleagues within the different divisions of the Department of Community Services, and all of our city partners who continue to partner with us, work with us, and I especially am grateful for their patience. This concludes my presentation. Mahalo.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I feel like you have your own department because there are so many programs that you have to administer. Members, do you have any questions? Chair Waters.
Thank you so much. Not so much a question, but a comment. Thank you for your presentation today, but more importantly, the hard work that you and your department do. You know, I had the opportunity to visit you firsthand and see what you do. And I got to tell you, and I want to encourage the other members to actually go and check it out, because you can see for yourself the impact that you're having on Honolulu. So I really, really appreciate that. And I do want to take the opportunity. I learned this from Calvin Say when he was the Speaker of the House. He encouraged me. I used to tag along with him when he went and visited the various departments and the various people who were asking for funding, because it really helps to actually see the work that you did and you do. I did go to the corners once, and I would not suggest that, folks. That was a little bit scary, but I'm getting off topic, I know. But my point is, go visit them. Check it out. Check out all of the various departments, especially during the budget process, right? It's super helpful. So anyway, yeah, I was digressing a little bit, but thank you.
Mahalo, Chair.
Councilmember Cordero.
Thank you. As Chair Waters put into practice, he invited me to go with him, I think last year, or I forgot which year.
He didn't invite me.
Oh. Yeah, we can only go to, during the budget process. Anyway, and it was also in my district. Okay, so first off, I would like to say, of course, when you go there, you get to see that all these partnerships at play, and definitely you can see not just like the work that goes in, but also it's more than just camaraderie, but I can't think of any other word to describe it as, that all of them have for each other and helping one another. And even if they're working in different divisions. And for me, it was so awesome to see, like, from the veterans to our youth. I saw some youth from Farrington when I went over there. I was so excited. But okay, moving to the question. Okay, getting there. Okay, so I know that you do work with state DHS and other entities, and of course on the city side, you know, utilizing all the partnerships and connections that we have at Work Hawaii. I was wondering, and I've been asking different departments this, like, are you able to share, or do you already share with either HR or DHR or even DDC or DFM different work and apprentice or other types of programs from the high school to college level, so that they can start those partnerships at those level already to see them through? And if that already happens, that's great already too.
Thank you for your question. Yes, we are partnering today. In fact, I have a meeting tomorrow with DHR. So we continuously have been partnering with DHR to fill the many pukas in the city's workforce. And our last co-partnering event was the January 25th Career Expo, where Director of DHR had invited us to stand up a computer center so that job seekers there could easily and readily apply for city jobs online. We also stood up the interview rooms in the Hawaii suites, and we are going to continue to work with them on the next Career Expo, which I believe is on August 25th. I'm also a member of the Bloomberg Center Harvard Innovation Track this past year. So I continue to work with city agencies besides HR, with OER, Climate and Sustainability. It's a 12-member team, includes HPD, DIT, Parks and Recs, and together we're using the creative and innovative strategies that we've learned in the last 12 months to come up with different initiatives. And one of the initiatives that we'll be rolling out this fiscal year, and probably next as well, is creating a pipeline or pathway, to say, from high schools or colleges to city jobs. So the Work Hawaii, along those lines, will be getting a grant soon that we will share with council that will allow us to create city internships as well as internships in the private sector. And so we look forward to be able to, again, work with our city partners to roll that out. We look forward to the valuable lessons learned. And so it's very exciting.
Thank you. Thank you, Lace. Administrator Nakamura, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And of course, I think you're going to get plenty of people if you have Deputy Director Los Baños there at the tables there. So keep it up.
I noticed that. It's inserted in the slide deck. Councilmember Wire.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Administrator. Particularly appreciate the photos because it puts faces to all the work that you're doing, and I think it shows what we can accomplish when, we're putting our hearts and our minds into the work that we do, because I know you do every day, your staff does, and so really appreciate what you do. I believe you're also out, or staff were out on North Shore at the Velziland Waile'e Beach cleanup. I heard, appreciate that. I know there are folks up there that need help, and of course, that's an ongoing issue that we're working on. I wanted to maybe ask if you could dive a little bit more into the homeless work that you do, just so I can better understand, because I think what we're walking through in our district is, how we can get folks connected and who we should be calling for what issue, and also when providers are stretched thin, where we can try to fill gaps. And so I don't know if you have insight on that.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Yes, Council Member. Here's an example of how we partner with our city agencies and, in fact, council members. My colleague, who's the administrator over the department's Community-Based Development Division, CBDD, Mr. Darrell Young, he will oftentimes send us email communication. A council member, a staffer of the council member has gotten a complaint, a concern, and he asks if we can go in and check out that encampment, check out the individuals, that families. And of course, the city agencies, the council, is our priority. So we take the time out to get the relevant information so we can go and find that individual and provide, disseminate our services. Now, one thing that is key when you're providing outreach services is follow-up, persistent follow-up. Many of these individuals are they move around. That does not hold us back from following up. We have our partners out in the community. We have the agencies that we provide outreach missions on. So we're constantly talking, communicating with folks to find out where the individual or family has moved to. And then we go back and we reach out to provide the services. We know full well the first, the second, and perhaps the third time, they will still be resistant. That doesn't hold us back. We do not have a policy about the number of times we go and reach out to a person. We rely on our gut to tell us, Paul, we need to move on. And so that's how we operate. We have very seasoned, passionate, dedicated outreach staffers who have worked for many years in the field. You folks probably don't know, so I will share that the team, before the team became the team, it was the original HONU staff. So we stood up the original HONU, and so we made sure that when we started the HONU, which was totally new for Work Hawaii, and I believe the city, as a 24-hour outreach navigation center, we made sure that we found staff that had experience. So we were very fortunate to find staff who had worked with homeless individuals and families for many years, and we were able to get them to come over to the city. And I tell you, that was really an asset to have individuals already with trusted relationships in the community. That helps us be able to just make that connections really fast. At Work Hawaii, we understand that it's important for us to be always ready to respond quickly, because as we are able to go home to our halis, as we enjoy the work we do in the city, many of the community members we serve don't have that. So we don't let people, which is what the paperwork represents, sit. We respond. And I work alongside my colleagues. As the administrator, I feel it's very important that I'm able to empty the trash, and stand here today presenting to you folks. So I would say reach out directly to me, council member, to Darrell if he's more available, and we will get an update, we'll get the relevant information, and make sure that we follow up on your concern.
I appreciate that. Do you know approximately how many staff you have doing that type of outreach?
I do know specifically how many
Perfect.
staff I
I knew
have.
you would. I knew you would.
Two.
Okay.
Two.
How are those funded? Because I know you have a lot of federal funds for American Job Center. Is that real property tax, or is that federal funds too, or?
I'll have Deputy Director answer that. Thank you.
Okay.
So if I can add a little bit more context, aloha, Edward Los Panos, Deputy Director, Department of Community Services. So if I can add a little more context, so this is kind of consistent with this administration's approach to homelessness, trying to affect, one of our big pillars was trying to affect individuals' decisions to engage programs. So sometimes when you see a social worker, you think, oh, I don't want to be clean and sober, and you're just going to reject them automatically. If you have priors, you might not engage with HPD on their side and their community policing team. So, we're looking at different ways to engage. So through this Work Hawaii program, it's a different kind of intervention. It's a different kind of conversation that we have with this individual, and it's also effective. So I want to kind of provide that context. So oftentimes, when we get messages from council members, or we'll get it from Office of Housing, hey, Edward, what's the service provider in this district area? And that's that's how it ends up at Division Administrator Darrell Young. And so then one of the tools that we have at our discretion immediately is our Teamwork Hawaii. So we have them work, so we provide the information, pass along what we have, and we work with them to get those, make sure that those individuals or those locations are included in when they do their coverage, when they make it out there in the next visit. So that's how we do it. So as relative to funding, and this is kind of touches on the funding that Councilmember Kiana has been pressing for us to do at CDBG. So we're piloting this program with CDBG CV funding that we've going to do for, and we're hoping to have more of these things, kind of programs, as we make that program available to other service providers.
Okay, I appreciate that. And nothing would prevent the city, not that you want it, so I'm not trying, but if we wanted to add positions through general funds to create more positions for street outreach type work, that would be an option too.
So in our upcoming budget request,
not necessarily even this year, but just broadly speaking.
So big picture wise, Lay's Work Hawaii program falls under Office of Workforce Development Board. So that's kind of a Department of Labor structure, a mechanical structure that they need to have in order to run their programs. It's kind of like their policy arm and policy head, but it's primarily focused at Department of Labor. So, I mean, I commend Lay. She has decades of work experience in this specific field and has that passion that she wants to do more than just what her Workforce Investment Act grants allow her to do. So she is working to get that flexibility in this upcoming budget, including in that budget request are more general funded positions. So she has more flexibility to reach beyond Department of Labor, embrace other opportunities, and be more innovative. And I personally believe that's necessary to be more innovative and create the linkages that we have. Prior to this meeting, we had a discussion briefly with Councilmember Kiana about economic development, the EDA funds that from the federal side. Are we attracting that? I said, well, right now we're kind of tied to the Department of Labor because that's where our sweet spot is, and that's kind of where our genealogy lies. But as we get that flexibility in the future budget, more general funded positions will have folks that can work on non-Department of Labor grants and opportunities.
Okay, so theoretically, even because it sounds like what they're doing is direct services, so ESG, direct service money could technically probably pay for these positions too. Does that sound accurate?
Yes, through street outreach, correct.
Through street outreach. Yep. And the reason I ask is I know we're having this ongoing conversation with the community is how can we get money out to providers? And then we have providers that are going through struggles as well. And I think particularly for District 2, a largely rural community, where we're working to try to build capacity, but then we're seeing struggles and providers right now talking about maybe closing their doors. And so it's trying to figure out how to have this partnership where, if the city is effectively doing street outreach, can that come up alongside providers in a bigger way? Maybe not, but maybe that's something we could discuss, because we want to ensure that, like the administrator mentioned, that follow-up happens, because that's what builds the trust with the community, and that's what actually leads to that movement. Because if you're only getting enough funding as a small provider and only able to follow up once a month, and then of course don't have the same resources and connections, and so you don't, a lot of times we hear, oh, we couldn't find the person, right? And so I think it's figuring out how we can all work together. And this is just off the top of my head, so I'm not saying we should do it, but I know Administrator Nakamura is doing great work, and so I'm like, oh, maybe this is kind of a plan that we can incorporate, whether it's under her division or another division, to have the city step in a little bit more. Because even if we are looking at reprogramming, right? So say a nonprofit provider closes, we'd have to reprogram that money somewhere. And whether it goes to another nonprofit or it goes to the city, I think our community's main concern is just to ensure that it results in services getting out into the community so we tangibly see an improvement. Sorry, I know that's kind of long, but that's kind of where I was thinking. I don't know if you have thoughts, either of you, but.
So certainly, I think with our limited funding that we have and the amount of kuleana we have with regard to this houseless population that we're discussing right now, it's essential that we leverage our opportunities and our funding. So just so you know, Teamwork Hawaii is plugged into the HUD coordinated entry system. They do have access to HMIS, the information system that tracks information and demographic data on each individual, houseless individual that's encountered and in the HUD system. So they can make those connections. We do have that. They do also network with the caseworkers if the individuals are representative or have existing caseworkers. So it's always helpful to find individuals, especially in your district where they might move and hard to find and locate after they relocate or move, yeah.
No, I appreciate that, especially we're in this prime moment where we have all these federal funds available, and can we actually saturate the market to build that foundation like we all talk about, right? So then we're set up and we're prepared once that funding's gone to have that foundation in place, right? With the street outreach systems, organizations with capacity, because I think right now we struggle with capacity in the nonprofit sector because those folks are working super, super hard, right? We struggle with not having enough non-congregate shelter space, of course, housing opportunities. But if we have that foundation, then I think the rest we can build on, right, going forward. But appreciate the insight. Yeah. And I only ask because looking at this, it's like the tangible outcomes we want to see, like, this is working. So whatever we're doing here, and I know it's specific in a lot of ways to the DOL and the federal funds, but I just wanted to share that. So mahalo.
So to be clear, because Administrator Nakamura is not going to take credit for this, this isn't like the best of hit list of Leigh's decades in her career of success stories. These are all recent success stories. So if you visit Work Hawaii, this is something, she has testimonials, she has success stories, and they change every quarter. So and they are all recent success stories. So don't look at this as the success stories in here as the best of hit list or anything like that. These are all real results that happen on a normal basis that she can change the testimonials every quarter at Work Hawaii.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Okimoto.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to jump on the bandwagon of just expressing appreciation. Gosh, Administrator Nakamura, Leigh, I could just feel your passion as you were sharing. And I'm excited to do what Chair Waters suggested, which is go and do a site visit. I always talk about my previous life as a special education teacher, and in those 10 years, I taught all types of students from kindergarten through 8th grade, and when my students left me, and most of them were the people that would fall into this area. So since I've been in public service, the thing I've really focused on is how can we do exactly what you're doing, and I wish we could duplicate you, because I really feel honestly that if we had more of you in the world with your passion and efficiency and the way you lead by example, I know we would have you would leave the world a better place. But I had a couple of questions, and again, just thank you, because I want to really stress the importance of, when I think about the students, the students who left me, and I actually almost got emotional as you were talking, because these are real people, and a lot of them fall through the pukas, and we don't know what happened to them. And I would kind of follow my kids as the years went by, but it's been a while. So I really appreciate all that you guys are doing, because we want to put them back into society. We want them to be able to be contributing members, and that they are doing things not just for themselves, but it'll be generations that you are affecting here. I just have a couple of questions on the numbers here. For the Work Hawaii Resource Center, I just noticed, and maybe you could explain to me, I'd like to look at numbers. For fiscal year 22, it has 2,800 users, and then fiscal year 23 has 1,500 users. Could you explain that to me, and what the decrease was, and maybe the reason behind that?
Sure. Thank you for asking. So the 23 numbers reflects what we've done since July 1 to present. So it's not a full 12 months.
It'll end in July.
Yeah, it will end in June.
June, right.
Yeah, so it doesn't reflect the full year. Now, it could be that the numbers will be lower or higher. We will wait and see. But I want to also say that the users don't represent unduplicated numbers. Many times, these job seekers with multiple barriers come several times to use our services.
That's great to hear. And on average, if we were to find fiscal year 21, what would it have been for the number of users? Is it around the same amount?
Yep. Because of the pandemic, in 21
okay.
we had less numbers.
Pre-COVID.
But typically, pre-COVID, we used to run about the same amount of numbers. Now, the numbers really spiked when we did hiring events at the Blaisdell about, I would say, 10 years ago with Success Advertising. When we were there, of course, they would have at least 2,000 to 5,000, depending on when the hiring event was. For instance, it was going to be closer to graduation time. You get more job seekers, more college graduates, high school graduates, right, who are coming to look for jobs. So it just all depends. We did move. So we were at the Dillingham Shopping Plaza for 22 years. We were on the ground floor. So people knew where we are. We moved to Dole Cannery 2 years ago. And so we're located now on the 7th floor. The space is much better. It really gives us the opportunity to create a culture with the customer in mind. But people are getting used to where we are. So we really are looking at our outreach strategies and want to do more. We always want to get better at what we do.
We all do, yeah. That's a good way to see life, just in general. And it says here every 5 to 6 weeks, you guys are having these hiring events.
Yes.
And it looks like it's a success. I had a question about, when they come to you, and it sounds like there's duplicates, but when they come to you till, I guess, they leave, about how long does this process take from when they apply at one of these hiring events to them getting out into the workforce?
Okay, so at the hiring events, we just began to provide post sessions of job coaching. So how that looks like is individuals come, they sign in with us, and if they want to, so we ask them, would you like to further explore job training, job readiness, activities with us. So for those who say yes, we take down their contact number and then we follow up with them. So we had 2 cohorts of job seekers that came to utilize our services. Some of them found jobs through us, some of them didn't. But by doing that, we're taking a really low-touch event, like a hiring event, and now we have the opportunity to create working relationships one-on-one with these job seekers who haven't come to us specifically to be enrolled into one of our programs, but have come through us through a mass event, like a hiring event. So that's been really, really important for us to do that, adding a different layer, another layer, I should say, of services through another avenue to the city and to Work Hawaii.
Thank you. And of the between 20 to 2,800 users that you have, how many staff do you have that are helping with the nearly 3,000 a year users? And you said some are duplicates, but I guess around 2,000, maybe 2,500 a year.
We have one full-time staff in the resource center that provides one-on-one services. However, we have 5 employment consultants who actually provide the case management for those individuals who want job training, who also will be, the supplemental staff in the resource center. So for instance, at one of the hiring events, as the event went on, there were more and more individuals that were coming up to the resource center. In fact, by the end of the day, we had 40 plus. So when that happens, when the resource center is packed, and by packed we mean over 10 individuals, the full-time staffer calls the employment consultants who are part of the AJCH, and they come in to help. We also set everything up on rolling tables and chairs so we can quickly expand the resource center into the foyer, which it's just outside of the administrative section of Work Hawaii, and it's a big foyer, so we stand up. So what we know is important is we have to act immediately. We cannot tell these job seekers, oh, here's my card, here's my number, come see us later. That doesn't work. We need to respond immediately. And so we're able to pivot. We're able to get bigger, get smaller as necessary.
Thank you so much for sharing. Again, I want to just reiterate, I just love and feel your passion. And I think it's really good, especially wherever you go right now, private or public sector, you hear that the issues are having people who are willing to work. So the fact that you have a program where they're coming to you and they want to get out there, this is what we need to do. We need to get people to stop incentivizing people to stay home and get them out in the workforce. I just want to commend whoever came before me to start this program, and I look forward to supporting you and visiting you with my office so that we can continue to support you the best that we can. Mahalo. Thank you, Chair.
Mahalo.
Thank you. Any other members? Do you have Councilmember Say?
Lay, how can we help you? You know why? I was just thinking, as far as maybe the paradigm may change. Well, no, this is just my thought. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel, but to be very candid and honest, do you think that the Department of Labor at the state level, Department of Community Services at the city level, go and talk to the Board of Education to go back to the old days of the 3-month summer? Rather than breaking it up into spring, winter, summer, fall. The idea is that you have 3 months to deal with these high school and college kids in finding that pathway. You break it up in 2 weeks, they're not completing anything, the kids. You know what I'm getting at now? That consistency, that long-term, like how we used to work at the cannery. Some form of a summer job to keep them off the streets also. That's number one. And number two, this is just another thought. Are we prepared now, Edward? Once we talked about the rental utility relief fund expires, these renters are going to be short of cash. Are we already communicating with them to find jobs?
Thank you for your comments and questions. And in regards to your last comments about the rental relief programs, we are working very closely with OER. We've had communication so that they're well aware that when the program finally does end, that we're there to help those individuals and families transition into our programs. And in regarding to being consistent and your comments about just be consistent with the young people. It's very important, whether it's a 3-month break, 2 weeks, or 1 day, we need to keep our young people engaged. And we do that by listening to them, by really honoring their aspirations, and giving them the opportunity to try different things and look at their failures as learning lessons. This is very important.
Madam Chair?
Yes, please do so.
Ms. Nakamura, the reason why I bring these topics up is because I think the district that both Chair Waters and I represent, and it's a case example, is Kaimiki High School. 3 months, 2 months, 3 months, 2 months. 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 3 months, 2 months, 3 months, And most of the student body there are Micronesians. They have no concept of value of education. Their parents are not actively involved in the school. And these are the latchkey kids that are out there just meandering throughout the community. And that's the only reason why I thought about summer programs for them. You know that you're going to get them off the streets for at least 3 months. They'll have a older person supervising that child. But when you see them in Kapahulu Avenue, Kuhio Avenue, Kalakaua by the zoo in the evenings, it's kind of scary. So I just bring this concern up because I don't know what to do also. Palolo housing, same thing. So it's, for me, I want to help. And I'm trying to give you folks ideas too. And that's all it is. It all costs money in the end. And then in closing, I saw the news that I was concerned about on the federal help for SNAP, Supplemental Nutritional Act program. That's going to be cut back now. And the cost of food and everything else has gone up, right? So I know you have a very, very big task ahead of you, but if we could be of any help, just call upon us to, not that we're asking you to help, but we got to help you too. Two-way street. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Say. With regard to the Micronesian community, I highly suggest that we have a Pacific Island liaison for the city in the Office of Economic Revitalization, Shanti Asher, who you may want to set up a meeting with, as well as Josie Howard, who you know with We Are Oceania. They actually have branched out beyond St. Elizabeth's and actually has a youth center. And so I'm pretty sure Lena Ala's programs actively works with both the Pacific Liaison Office as well as We Are Oceania. But I just wanted to reiterate what everyone has been saying. You clearly have the strong support of all of the city council members, and we want to do everything we can to find you the resources that provides the flexibility that the deputy director was talking about, as well as the necessary manpower to continue to do the good work that you're doing. Just a couple of comments. I advertise your Work Hawaii program all the time on my Facebook, and highly recommend that we all kind of try to help her get out the word. On the rental relief program, I think you should also just be working directly with Catholic Charities and Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement now, because we've expressed concern that the challenge that we're facing at the city level, and actually all of the state of Hawaii, is a lot of people not going back to work. You have a very difficult job, yet your clientele, you're doing everything you can to get people to go to work. For the greater population who don't have the disadvantages of the clientele that you're targeting, they're not going to work. And before we close this section of the hearing, can I just ask your mana'o on, because you've already convinced us, you guys are doing everything possible for a lot of folks out there who simply don't want to work. I just got notified that Windward Mall is going to be limiting their hours because the across-the-board cuts in all of their shops. So do you have any mana'o on the challenges that we are facing as a state as well as a city level on all of the workers who are just not wanting to work?
Yeah.
How do we help get people back to work?
Chair, this is an ongoing conversation that we're having in the workforce development world. Where are the job seekers? Why aren't they coming forward? Yeah, and there's a couple of things I think that contribute to that. One is the trauma from the pandemic. Yeah, we have people, have job seekers, have families sat around to talk about it. In their halis, with others, have we been sensitive enough to that? Give them the opportunity to talk about that, listen. But once that's done, yeah, once the listening and the talking is telling them, it's like remotivating, it's like coaching people all over again that they have valuable strengths, skills, and work experience. It's like the woman I shared with you who joined our Ho'ala program. Yes, she was struggling with substance use, right? What do we know the mainstream job seeker is thinking about work? Have we given them enough time to talk about it and then help them move forward? You know, we understand that when we greet our guests, our customers at Work Kauai, and even at our hiring event, when we approach them and we say, aloha, what brings you here today? What kind of job are you looking for? Oh my gosh, you should see the light that goes on for them because we took the time out to see them, acknowledge them. Yeah, I know there are many more complicated issues that surround the question of where are the job seekers. But I believe aloha, when we're able to deliver our services with aloha, we show them respect, maybe people will begin to listen and really understand that them coming back to work not only is taking care of themselves and their ohana, but you're contributing to the community. How many of them feel valuable that way? So these are questions, these are things that we talk about. You know, it's beyond any report, stats, whatever, that is put in front of each of you. But I think it's that simple first.
Thank you for your mana'o. And, you know, the Deputy Managing Director in the training programs and reinvestment in the Liquor Commission staff is exactly the type of remotivation, as you're talking about, that we need to do throughout the city, but also in the private sector as well. Thank you again for your presentation. Vice Chair, if you could. No.
Okay, members, we will now proceed with remote testimony. If there's anyone standing by remotely, please use your raise hand feature on Zoom. Okay, first up we have Angela Melody Young.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair of the committee. Angela Melody Young, testifying in strong support and providing comments. CARES just wants to advocate to uplift programs like this. It's very helpful. It helps the blind people, the youths. I hope that more of this kind of work environment can be implemented elsewhere. You know, when training for the workforce with these demographics, it's easy to condemn, complain, or criticize. But what we've heard from that presentation and the conversation was so much equity, hope, and compassion. And the culture is to look down upon these minorities and marginalized people groups. So oftentimes the work culture within these minorities and marginalized people groups is that, you know, just get the work done, but we're not going to treat you right. So in this era where we value ethics and ethics is being implemented by law, we are aware that there shouldn't be child labor and there should be, you know, fair working conditions, a fair working environment where we have dignified working conditions. And also, you know, in this era where with ethics and ethical law, working conditions can be audited to make sure that safety and health standards are being met. So, you know, I'm just providing comments. I hope labor conditions and the ethics of programs like this continue to do what they do. It's very equitable and sustainable. These programs and services are
Angela,
great.
please summarize.
Okay, I will summarize. They don't just create opportunities, but it creates meaningful and hopeful opportunities. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Okay. Clerks, do we have any further remote testifiers?
Vice Chair, there are none.
Okay, thank you. Seeing there are no further remote testifiers, we will now proceed with in-person testimony. Clerks, do we have any registered in-person testifiers?
Vice Chair, there are none.
Okay. If there are none, members, we are in discussion. Okay, thank you. Just give us a moment.
Thank you again for the presentation. Moving on to agenda item number 4, update on the allocation and use of American Rescue Plan Act fiscal recovery funds. As the administration starts to implement more of the ARPA Tranche 2 projects, and as there continues to be recommendations to reprogram Tranche 2 projects, I think it's important to get regular updates from the administration on the allocation and spending in ARPA fiscal recovery funds. So mahalo to Deputy Managing Director Krishna Jairam for presenting an update today.
Good morning again, Vice Chair, Council Chair Waters, and Council members. Thank you for having me here for this update. Before I get into the update itself, I wanted to thank the Council. Our team had an opportunity to brief the new Council members on the FRF generally. I also personally had a chance to sit down with Budget Chair Cordero and talk through some of these FRF issues. Vice Chair Kiana's team made us aware of some deficiencies with the dashboard that we are working on. And Council Chair, I want to thank you in particular. Your team reached out, and we were going to have regular meetings with your team. And so I really hope we can just improve our communications and get the information that you folks need to do what you need to do. So thank you. And as part of that, the presentation we have today, I tried to distill it down in a way that in the future when I appear, maybe I could show you what changed since the last time I was here. I thought that might be helpful. And for the council members, a lot of it is we think something is helpful, but it in fact might not be. So I really do need feedback if this is a format that's appealing to you all, and if we should just track this and keep adding to this. So first slide, FRF funds, total commitment. So what this does is it breaks down between Tranche 1 and Tranche 2, how much was received, how much is approved and in progress. So for Tranche 1, 186 million is approved and in progress. For Tranche 2, 103 million is approved and in progress. And then there's a total number there, which shows you the percentage of all FRF funds approved and in progress. The next slide. This is the dashboard. This gives you sort of a big picture look with our 4 main focus areas: what's been approved, what's been encumbered, and what's expended. So this shows you, generally speaking, in big picture items, how that previous slide breaks down in terms of our focus areas. And then the last slide is specific to Appendix A, which is the second tranche. And so there are 45 total projects in Appendix A. 15 projects, 33% have been approved and in progress. 15 projects are in active development, and 8 projects are still being evaluated by responsible power, and we have 7 projects which we have currently flagged as potentially non-viable. So we will be coming back to the council member who included that item in Appendix A to have a further discussion about what to do with those projects. I will pause there. This is the summary that we've prepared for today, and I'll be happy to take any questions, Vice Chair.
Sure, thank you. Before we move to questions, I wanted to know, with regard to the non-viable projects, what's your time frame in meeting with the council members, and can we get a list of those 7 projects?
Thank you, Vice Chair, for the question. I'd be happy to give you a list of the non-viable projects. We'll get that to you in writing after.
And non-viable is based on the U.S. Treasury guidelines?
It'll either be guidelines or law or something of that nature. And so we will also, if it's helpful, note what went into that viability determination.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Awire.
Appreciate that, Chair. And that would actually be extremely useful, Deputy Managing Director. And if the non-viability reason could be specific to, if there's particular portions of the guidance that are relevant, or particular CFRs or laws, it would be helpful just to give our staff guidance, because otherwise we might just have to follow up again, yeah?
Absolutely, happy to do that, sir.
Thank you.
Chair Waters.
Thank you. I was just asking staff whether or not the mayor's message recently updating us on the status of both Tranche 1 and Tranche 2, actually reflects this information that you have here on this slide deck?
The report that we submitted just a few days ago.
Correct.
It should match.
It should match. So in that report on Appendix A, and I'm working off of a older copy, but maybe we could just go through it real quick. It would be super helpful just identifying in Appendix A what's not viable and then the reason why. Are you able to now tell us, because these projects are conveniently numbered, 1 through 44, and if you could just go through it and tell us, you don't have to tell us the reason today, but if you can, just tell us what number is not determined to be not viable.
Chair, I don't want to get this wrong and give you wrong information now. If it'd be acceptable to you, I'd like to get that information on Appendix A separately.
Sure. If you're not prepared to do that today, that's fine. I do have some specific questions dealing with just a handful. Yesterday's presentation dealing with housing was excellent. I thought that was a great update, so I'm not going to really go through Appendix A as it relates to housing, but I do have some other important questions and asking the status of a couple projects. For example, project number 1, assisting homeless or at-risk people with inpatient services to address substance abuse and/or mental health issues. According to my notes, it's in review. There was some attack apparently this morning right outside with people on beaky bikes. And I'm not sure if these folks are suffering from mental illness, substance abuse, but clearly this is an issue in our community. And what including this in the budget last year, what I envisioned was inpatient bed space, right? So when CORE goes up to someone and says, hey, you need help, how about there's a bed available for you at Silent Treatment Center, at Hinamauka, or at Ho'omauke'ola, right? $5 million. These bed spaces is very expensive. That's what was envisioned. Can you give us an update on whether or not this money is being used for that?
So it's under review, meaning it has not been used yet, but DCS is working on a master proposal for this. And what I would like to offer Chair Waters, maybe at future informational hearings, maybe it's helpful if I actually bring the departments with me for the projects that aren't in progress. And I think that might be, we might just be able to give you better up-to-date information right here and done.
And I take to heart what the managing director said yesterday, execution as learning, right? So we're working through this together, and perhaps, I can come up with a proposal to help move this along a little bit better and get you in touch with the providers so that the administration can maybe put out an RFP and start utilizing these funds for substance abuse and our mental health issues. Okay, moving down to number 6. And by the way, I just want to point out that rather than calling these council ads, let's call them community ads. Because as you know, we all, when we're out in our communities, whether or not it be at the neighborhood boards or even walking door to door or at community meetings, this appendix reflects what we learned while we're out there in the community. So let's call it community ads. So number 6, funding for cesspool conversions. Did you guys know that in our city parks, beach parks, bathrooms are still on cesspools? And beach parks are right next to the ocean. So the cesspool, this kukai, waste, will leach into the ocean based on our own beach parks. There's a number of cesspools across the state, but across the island. So $5 million, it's estimated it's going to take like 35 million to convert them all, right? I mean, island-wide. But I'm thinking that we can start by being a good example and clean up our own beach parks. So can you please give us an update on number 6, funding for cesspool conversions?
Understood. On this one, I happen to have a little bit of information that
Awesome.
ENV is working on an RFP for this purpose. Again, Chair, with apologies, the details I'll have to get to you separately.
Okay. Well, no, that's good news that it's being worked on. Number 14, funding to support food security projects with the intent of increasing local capacity. Local capacity, that means farming, right? We talked a lot about this, and me and the mayor were there. We signed a pledge to try to grow more food, right, and use locally grown produce. So I know there was a request for $12 million, and part of that request, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is for the food bank. But really, what we're doing here on number 14 is food security projects with intent of increasing local capacity, right? We want to help farmers. So can you tell us an update on number 14?
So on number 14, I do know OER is working on it. My understanding on the briefing that I received from them last month now was that they had discussions with, I believe, your team about what their thoughts are on it. So I apologize, but if they haven't had those discussions, I will follow up with them.
And by the way, if there's any people still watching on Bill 10 who commented on agriculture, the idea here really is we want farmers to grow food, right? That's the whole idea of tightening it up on Bill 10. You know, we got to work with the farmers to actually help them. But the idea is, you know, we understand you want to use your ATV and have agritourism, but really, we want you to grow food. $1 million is really nothing if we think about the scope of the problem, right? That we have, and I'm pontificating a little bit, sorry, but we have only 1 week's worth of food on the island. Could you imagine if a big storm comes, shipping is down, right? What we're going to do? Anyway, okay, moving on. Number 18, funding for current expenses for Honolulu Police Department Patrol Division. You know, a lot of us campaigned on this. A lot of us believe this, that a patrolling police officer is the best deterrent to crime, right? So we put in another $1 million for this. Could you give us an update on number 18?
Certainly. This one I have specific information. So we spoke to Chief Logan about this 2 weeks ago. We asked for an update. He is working on a report back on what HPD's plans are for this. We have our own ideas. We share your concern about public safety. We think this money should be expedited and moved out. So.
Okay, so an explanation forthcoming. Number 20, stormwater and flood risk management. Sitting on all of our desks is a bill to increase fees, right, for homeowners for flood mitigation, right? People tell me, and I'm sure they're telling my colleagues this, that they don't want to pay more fees, right? They feel that their property taxes is enough. It's a tough call because we know that our flood mitigation lines, right, our storm drains are too small based on the amount of homes that we've built, right? So we put in an additional $4 million for flood mitigation. Again, this is a drop in the bucket compared to really the scope and size of the problem. Can you tell us whether or not you've used the $4 million?
That money has not been used yet. It has been assigned to DFM to develop a plan. What I do know is that they're trying to figure out within, as you mentioned, it is a drop in the bucket, how they can best use that $4 million, maybe for some kind of study, something that will give them a plan forward on how to address these issues. But
well, just to let you know, I was thinking that if we have a list of things that need to be done, because obviously we do, if the administration wouldn't be saying we need to raise fees if they didn't actually have a list of things to do, just knock out the number one thing, $4 million, boom. Tell us what number 2 is. Let's figure that out, right? Stream maintenance is, of course, a big deal for me. You can use that for stream maintenance. $4 million, boom, go get it done. Okay. This is just a fun one. I don't even know whose project this is, but number 32, establish a dog park at Hoa Aloha Neighborhood Park. I'm not sure where Hoa Aloha Park is. Maybe anybody on the panel today can tell me, but.
So I'm happy to report that one is in progress. That proposal is on deck.
It's yours?
It is one of the council members. I'll let that council member speak for themselves,
All right.
I think.
No, thank you. I mean, that kind of detail is super helpful because, again, these are community ads, and really appreciate that.
Chair, if I might, based on this feedback, I think what I will do in the future with the Vice Chair's blessing is I will have the departments here so they can provide you detailed responses on each of these items, because I don't think this is helpful for me to say just generally, well, it's this department and this is what they're thinking of doing. So if that's what the committee would find helpful, that's what we'll do.
Let's think about this, because I think what we need to know first is those projects that are in the priority order, right? We need to know what projects are not going to be funded. So those departments need to be here. And then I think what everyone here needs to know is what is the status of all of the various projects. And I leave it to you on what you want to profile, because I would hate for us to be utilizing the whole cabinet's time. How about we be strategic? Maybe my staff and I would look it over and we will compartmentalize it by areas, so certain directors will be here. Is that okay? I just want to save everybody some time. And but can I? Are you finished, Chair? I do have a comment about your ag program, but I'll make it after you finish your comments.
Yeah, almost finished. Thank you. This whole idea with Appendix A, I mean, we're getting it in PDF form. We've been asking for it in more natural form, where you could just put in the project name and number, an explanation of where it's at, why it's not, as we mentioned, why it's not being approved, or if it is being considered. Get the department heads to just write in here. It might save you and us a lot of time. The other thing is, I know recently dealing with the renter relief, right? The administration came in for a repurposing of this, and we were happy to accommodate because we believe that it was a worthwhile project. But what I might suggest is, since we're about to enter into the budgeting process, that let's do it all within the budget process at this point. If we're going to reallocate tranche A funds, let's do it comprehensively when we go through the budget. And for some of the members who have their pet projects in here, if it's this could be from a previous council member. So perhaps we go back working with our budget chair, budget vice chair. If we're going to repurpose this money, let's do it after listening to all the needs of the administration, right? But anyway, just a suggestion.
Sure.
Thank you.
Before I move on to Councilmember Wire, let me update you on the agricultural items, because both of you and I, as far as I'm concerned, agriculture and the agricultural grants, as well as the food security provision, they're interrelated. I was confused because I thought that I was worried that the increase to $12 million was going to increase the rollout of my agricultural grants program. So I met recently with the Office of Economic Revitalization. There are two separate streams of funding. So phase 2 and phase 3 of the agricultural grants program should roll out shortly. That would be an increase of $8 million. I've already identified one of my projects on Appendix A to offset that increase. And the 1 million food security that you have in Appendix A, I believe that they are ready to go on that one. They were trying to compile it as part of a larger project about food access, a $12 million program. I did recommend that they follow up with you, because just to find out the viability, it shouldn't hold up the $1 million food security provision that you have. So the good news is they're completely separate programs. They're not going to impact each other. And so I feel better, and I actually owe the director a follow-up. So with that, we're going to move on to Councilmember Wire.
Thank you, Chair. No, just quickly. I actually was curious, because I know Mary's going to be doing the town halls. Do we think that through that, one, because we'll have budget already, that admin will be coming over maybe to budget chair and suggesting any amendments in light of the feedback that will happen at the town halls? or and also whether the town halls are maybe going to inform, how some of this money gets broken up.
So, Councilmember, thank you for that question. We are planning through what all topics we will at least present on at each town hall. And then obviously whatever questions come. So we are figuring out how FRF will be part of what we share with the community. In terms of whether the town halls will inform this item,
yeah, maybe I can elaborate a little bit. And so, like, for example, if you're at a town hall in District 2, and it comes to admin's attention that, this particular project is something that's important, if it's in the regular budget, I'd be happy to entertain you folks coming and saying, this is what we learned. Would you want to propose an amendment? And same for this funding, if the same kind of conversation.
Thank you for that question. I understand a little bit better now. So if there is a proposal to change something, an item in Exhibit A, and it's fully contained within that particular council member's item. So for example, if we had something from Council Member Tsuneyoshi that was X dollars for Y, and we wanted to come back to you to use X dollars for Z, the process that we would like to follow is to come back and have that discussion with you, and assuming that you're in agreement, we would go through a 15-day letter process to let council know this is the proposed change to Appendix A that we're thinking of doing. Where we're going to deviate from that is when it's a much larger project that needs to, like the RERP, that needs to pull from different projects that different council members put in. Then we felt a reso process would be appropriate to let the entire council weigh in.
No, I hear what you're saying, and I totally agree. I think that the whole council would need to weigh in, but even say like the CIP budget, right? So say we're going to already have it, but then it comes to admin, because like Chair Waters mentioned, when we put in requests or add-ons, oftentimes it's a reflection of what we're getting pushed from. And of course, we're doing assessments and folks assess differently. So some council members may give certain projects more weight than others. But at the end of the day, I think most of us are trying to be responsive to the community. And so when we look at all the great feedback that I think is going to come up, and so super grateful. I know Mayor's been out in District 2 quite a bit. Super grateful that admin's going to be out in the community for the next few months. And so I guess it could be specific to our district in terms of the current budget that's coming in, given that we have the ability to amend it. And then in terms of the reprogramming funds, some of it may be specific, right? So I think Council Member Tsuneyoshi had maybe 800,000 specific to District 2. But then I think when we're talking about, say, opportunities for mental health, substance abuse, dual diagnosis, you may have a specific project, right? Like say we're gonna be like, we're gonna acquire Lemon Road, Beachside Lemon Road. I'd assume you'd go talk to Chair Waters first, or, if there's a property in, say, Councilmember Cordero's district, I'd assume you'd go talk to the council member first too, right?
You're absolutely right. If there's a specific project that's distinct to that district, we would absolutely go to the council member for that district.
And I appreciate that. And I guess it's also a reflection on the general budget, because, I know there's always challenges in just executing council add-ons because you have a lot of planning that's going on in the departments. But, if over the next few months, there's stuff from the community that bubbles up to admin, I guess just wanted to relay that we'd be happy to work with you to ensure that the budget reflects what we know the community wants. Yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Yeah, mahalo.
Councilmember Cordero, do you have any comments? Okay, so any more comments? I think Deputy Managing Director, at a minimum, will be in further contact, but so I was planning every other month, but just given the fact that we're going to be having the budget come up shortly, I'd like to ask you to come back at the next hearing, so in the April hearing, and minimally it would include all of those items that are not going to be funded, and maybe we'll think about all of your reprogramming efforts that will likely go to the Budget Committee. So I'll be in contact with you, but minimally the update on the those that are not going to be funded.
It'd been my pleasure, and I'll share that
probably
information ahead of time. I apologize.
Okay, no problem. And then let's mull over an efficient way to address Chair Waters' concerns with regard to the totality of it. Of course, that's useful. I am concerned about having to bring in the full cabinet. And so maybe we can be strategic on the types of projects. I'll be in touch. And thank you for today. We will now proceed with remote testimony. If there's anyone standing by remotely, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, we have a remote testifier.
Angela Young?
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, and the committee, Angela Melody Young, testifying in strong support and to provide comments. Of course, as a safety advocate, very invested in the homeless efforts, and just want to comment about the ARPA funds for affordable housing and the homeless component of the crisis. As a concerned citizen, I'm looking forward to see how the ARPA funds can help the mayor's housing plan and then also the city's housing efforts. And just wondering if there's any integration planned for the emergency proclamations from the Green administration. We noticed that the last proclamation relating to homelessness with intentions to expedite housing and development processes was written by the AG, but did not have any city ordinances. No city exemptions were written into the emergency proclamation, but DPP's building codes from the city ordinances, have a lot to do with building and development. So the last proclamation was about building kahales faster to house the homeless.
Thank you. Angela, we're going to come to closure here. I just want to assure you that both the underlying budget from last year and the upcoming budget has a lot of funding for to address affordable housing and homelessness that the City Council and the Mayor has prioritized, as well as in the ARPA funding that we're rolling out. So thank you very much for your testimony.
Okay.
We will now proceed with in-person testimony. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
With that, thank you very much. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.